Joseph's Egypt survived famine. Daniel's Babylon encountered the knowledge of the true God. They rose from the ruins. In each of these, the faithfulness of the believer redefined governance. The biblical narrative thus rejects the notion that faith and politics must be divorced. Rather, it insists that without a moral foundation, politics denigrates into chaos, and without engagement, faith becomes sterile idealism. The two are meant to coexist. Faith purifying politics, and politics providing structure for faith ethical demands to manifest in society. Consider also the prophetic tradition. The prophets of Israel, like Elijah before Ahab, Nathan before David, and Isaiah before Hezekiah, these were not politicians, but they were profoundly political. They spoke to kings, rebuked injustice, and demanded righteousness in governance. Their authority lay not in office, but in truth. Their courage stemmed from the conviction that God's justice transcends earthly thrones. Thus, prophetic witness is in itself a form of political participation. It reminds rulers that authority is stewardship, not sovereignty. The New Testament continues this vision. Jesus acknowledged Caesar's domain when he said, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's." But he also declared a higher allegiance, and to God the things that are God. Mark chapter 12, verse 17. In that balance lies the Christian philosophy of political engagement, which is respect for political authority, yet ultimately loyalty to divine law. The Apostle Paul, when writing to the Romans, affirmed that there is no power but of God, yet he affirmed appeal to Caesar's court when justice demanded it. The early Christians prayed for rulers even as they endured persecution. They understood governance not as a rival to faith, but as an arena for witness. Political participation therefore takes many forms. It is not limited to public office or holding public office. It includes the cultivation of civic responsibility, the shaping of moral discourse, the defense of justice, and the pursuit of the common good. When a Christian lawyer, for example, defends the oppressed, when a Christian teacher nurtures responsible citizens and students, when a pastor educates congregants about civic responsibility, they participate in politics directly and indirectly as agents of righteousness. The Christian does not withdraw from the world, he redeems it with service. Modern political theology, from John Locke to Rousseau, shifted emphasis from divine sovereignty to social contract. Yet, even here, biblical residues remain. Locke's argument that legitimate government derives from consent and is bound by moral law. Paul's assertion that rulers are ministers of God for good. The best of liberal thought still assumes the moral architecture that Scripture first revealed, that power must first serve justice and that freedom requires virtue. When morality is divorced from politics, liberty becomes the license, and democracy decays into demagoguery. To Tocqueville, later warned, religion is democracy's most indispensable ally because it teaches men to govern themselves before they attempt to govern others. In the Nigerian context, this understanding bears urgent relevance. We inhabit a nation richly endowed, yet often misgoverned, fervently religious, yet morally fragmented. Religion commands the loyalty of millions, but too often it has been weaponized rather than sanctified. The challenge before the church today is not to capture the state, but to cultivate conscience within it. Pastors, as custodians of moral vision, occupy a unique position. They shape values that outclass elections. Their pulpit is not a platform for partisanship, but for principle. When pastors teach truth, justice, and integrity, they nurture citizens who will transform politics from within. Here, the words of Aristotle again finds resonance. The quality of a state, he said, is the quality of the citizens. If citizens are virtuous, the state will prosper. If they are corrupt, no constitution, no matter how carefully crafted, can save it. Thus, Christian participation begins not on the ballot box, but in the pulpit, in the home, in the heart, and wherever conscience is formed. Politics is downstream from character. If the church forms righteous men and women, governance will reflect righteousness. Yet, the Christian worldview adds a deeper dimension. It recognizes that human governance, however noble, remains imperfect until Christ reigns fully. The hope of believers is not utopian through human effort, but faithful stewardship until the kingdom comes. This guards us from the cynicism of idolatry, cynicism that despairs of politics altogether, the idolatry that worshippers or that worships it as ultimate. The Christian participate not because politics is perfect, but because it is necessary, not to establish heaven and earth, but to reflect heaven's order on earth. This balance is the mark of maturity. The believer who enters public office does so with humility, remembering that power corrupts when detached from principle. He seeks justice. He knows ultimate justice belongs to God. He forms He works for reforms, yet prays for redemption. He governs as Joseph did, being accountable to higher throne as Daniel did, staying faithful under pressure as Esther did, being courageous in intercession as Nehemiah did, and steadfast in rebuilding as Paul did, reasoning with authority, yet bound by conscience. If governance is stewardship, then disengagement is neglect. If the Lord is the Lord, if the act is the Lord, then public life is sacred territory. The Christian, therefore, cannot abdicate this responsibility. Our Lord's parable of the talent reminds us that accountability extends to every sphere, including civic life. What shall be required? Influence on use is influence wasted. Silence in the face of injustice is complicity. When the righteous withdraw, the void is filled with unscrupulous. Proverbs declare, the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked bear it through, the people mourn. It follows that righteousness in authority requires participation in authority. But participation must remain principle. The church must resist the temptation to become partisan machinery. Her calling is higher, to form conscience, to restrain corruption, to hold leaders accountable, and to remind the nation that still that God governs above the laws. Christian participation in politics is not about claiming power, it is about cleansing power. It is not about replacing one tribe with another, but about transforming the moral logic of governance itself. St. Augustine, for example, warned that without justice, kingdoms are but robberies. This insight applies to as much to modern democracies as to ancient empires. Justice is the soul of politics. When it departs, nations collapse inwardly. The church's contribution is to preserve the soul and that politics must remain answerable and morality to God. Therefore, the Christian statesman or the pastor influencing statesmen must be a philosopher. Think humbly, act humbly, and walk humbly. He must know that the measure of political greatness is not wealth or popularity, but righteousness. And he must believe that God still governs in the affairs of men. From Eden's dominion to Isaiah's prophecy, from Joseph's wisdom to Christ's lordship, the story remains one. Governance belongs to God. Yet he calls to share it. Christian participation in politics, when rightly understood, is therefore not an intrusion of religion into public life, but the fulfillment of humanity's original mandate to order creation in justice, to reflect divine authority in human institutions, and to prepare the world for the reign of the one upon whose shoulders the government eternally rests. We gave the following recommendations. One, strengthening ethical leadership, just like my father rightly established, promoting social justice, encouraging interfaith dialogue, leveraging the influence of the church, and fostering civic responsibility. I know a church in Nigeria today that has a department of political fellowship. In my opinion, that is the way to go. A department of political duties. And that is a church that is actually taking a lead. And I salute the ministry of this church actually for bringing such an initiative from chaos. They remind the world that dominion was always meant to be stewardship. The future of nations, including our own, depends not on the loudness of our religion, but on the integrity of our participation. For indeed, the kingdom of this, remember this internal principle, the government is upon its shoulders, but the responsibility is in our hands. Remember, the system will not work itself out until you and I put our hands, our hearts, and our energy together in a synergy to produce the kind of society we want. The days of expecting manna to fall from heaven are over. Whatever manna we want as a people must be planted, must be harvested, must be stored, must be cooked before they are finally consumed. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Today has been so much power packed. And I believe that Dr. Dunkwa will do a good job in giving us a little discussion into the two papers at once before I call the panel and the people that will discuss this. Help me welcome Dr. Ishaya Dunkwa.
Forgotten, I walked in a bit late. I deeply apologize. I wouldn't love to sit here but forgive me for that. But I came right on time.